Round of applause for Martyn.
Good morning. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to be presenting alongside so many clever people today. I'm a bit nervous about today. I'm going to tell you that right now. I'm a bit nervous because, well, firstly, as a presenter, this venue is quite strange. I feel like I'm being interviewed by about 50, 100 people. But secondly, because I haven't done a presentation in this format before. Usually when you kind of get told how to do presentations, they tell you that the structure, and probably the thing that you saw yesterday and the thing that you'll see today, is you start with a big grand idea, like something you present, an argument or something, you give them lots of evidence, and then you kind of draw a conclusion. I don't have any of that today. Instead, what I've got today is just a bunch of things that I've done over the past year. I thought that I would share it with you so that perhaps that you would learn something from it. Perhaps you can take some of the ideas that we used and use them yourself. Perhaps you'll take some of the stuff that we've done and build upon it. Perhaps you'll just watch out for some of the stuff that we did badly and avoid those mistakes. Or perhaps you'll just like some airline puns. So as Luke said, my name is Martyn. I set up and I run the user experience team at Virgin Atlantic. I've been in the job for just a little over a year now. There was no head of user experience before I started. There was no user experience team before I started. So a lot of what I've been doing in the first year has just been figuring out what the team needs to be, how it should be set up, what we should do, what kind of value we can bring to the organization. When I started, the team that I had was 3 or so content managers. There was a handful of testers, and that was it. That was the whole team. Today, the user experience team is 20, and that covers research, design, content, and optimization. We have another 20 to 25 or so people within the digital team who cover technology and marketing and SEO and trading and all those kinds of things. So now we have the team kind of up and running, and we're busy building out our new design system. We're implementing our new our new content strategy, building our roadmaps, writing our product strategies, etc., etc. So before I kind of dig into it, I get asked 2 questions a lot. 1, are you friends with Richard Branson? And 2, how did you get to this point? So first of all, no, it doesn't work like that in a Virgin company. I don't hang out on a beach with a millionaire, unfortunately. But how I got here, I can explain. So I graduated in '99, which makes me pretty old. So in my first job, it was with an ad agency, and I was sitting there in a meeting, not really knowing much, quite junior, and it was with a car company, and they started saying, well, you know, we hear this internet, this website thing kind of sounds quite important, and we think we should do something more with that. And the creative director from my agency said, yeah, I'll share you. Martyn knows loads about the internet, and don't worry about it. So I walked out of that meeting and started to learn HTML and find out what on earth he was talking about. I got completely hooked. 2001, moved out of kind of the kind of print brand type ad agency that I was in into digital. Ahead to 2006, where the team that I was running was no longer purely about design, but I was now running a team that had developers in it, some strategists. 2010, I took my first in-house job. And then end of 2017, I saw a job advertised and I applied for it. It's as simple as that. There's no silver bullet here. There's no secret special sauce to this. There isn't a secret group that we belong to get these kinds of roles. There's not much method, and there wasn't really much plan. I saw a job, I applied for it. So because my background is in design, and in many ways I still consider myself to be a designer, I went about the task of building up this team and creating this user experience for Virgin Atlantic like a design project. I had research, I had discovery, definition, all the usual phases within a design process. I had very kind of clearly defined things that I wanted to achieve throughout each of these phases, and I sort of made sure that I had achieved those before I moved on. each of the different phases had different time frames to them. They weren't particularly evenly spaced, but it allowed me to map it out and to understand where I was trying to get to and how to get there. So the first phase, the research phase. So this kind of really started as I was finishing my previous job. So I was working my notice period, still finishing up a lot of projects and running the team that I had in my last company. And I just started gathering lots of information. So I created a Dropbox paper file, and I just started writing in it, just pouring stuff into it, notes on things that I would expect to find there, questions that I wanted to ask, things that had done well previously, things that I had seen other people doing that I wanted to try out. And then I started absorbing information as well that was sort of publicly available. Got hold of Branson's book and read that, read press releases, read Wikipedia pages, made Pinterest boards of existing Virgin Atlantic designs, all that kind of stuff. So just gathering as much as I possibly could. Then kind of launched myself into my discovery phase. So bought myself a stack of moleskin notebooks, numbered them all. First couple of months I filled 4 books up. And I spent my time just meeting as many people as I could. I met people from marketing, from sales, from operations, from sister companies, from tech teams, etc., etc. I went over to Atlanta to meet Delta, who are our joint venture partners. And I just listened to people. I tried to just shut up and listen to what they had to say. I asked them how they felt about the digital experience today. I asked them about what their ambitions were. I asked them about things that I should change quickly or things that I shouldn't change quickly. And I did a little exercise, it's called a pre-mortem exercise, where I asked people to imagine that I'd been here for a year. I said, imagine that I've been here for a year and it's been a complete, total disaster. What does that look like? What did I do wrong? And so that capturing all of that allowed me to sort of surface people's fears, people's apprehensions, people's worries. It allowed me to sort of stick it all down, turn some of them into very easy actions. It was a lot like user research. You take all of this information, you group it up, you look for themes, work out how to create actions out of it. And whilst doing all of that, I had to also understand all the things that were currently happening in the team, because this was a team that was there at the time and was being asked to deliver a lot of stuff. So I already had to understand the projects that were happening. I had to understand all of the things that were already in flight. Airline pun number 1. So after about 3 months, 2 or 3 months, it became time to start making some changes and start moving the team forward. I'd formed a pretty clear idea at this stage about where I wanted to start. And what I soon realized is that there were some fundamental aspects to the team structure that we needed to move on. And so we couldn't do that necessarily in a fair and inclusive way with little small incremental changes. And to start with, we had to go through a relatively formal, or actually a very formal restructure process. And anyone who's ever been through that or been near it or been surrounded by it will know that it's tough and it's not something that you go into lightly. But to make sure that every possibility was considered and everyone had a fair opportunity in it and nobody kind of got put in a difficult position, we had to do it that way. And it was very difficult and it was extremely hard to manage whilst the team was being asked to deliver stuff. But we got through it, we got it done, everyone got comfortable into their new positions and into their new roles, and it was absolutely essential to our success. So now that we had the fundamentals in place, and the structure and the definition was cleared for takeoff, pun number 2, you're welcome. So we needed to start really getting things moving. Initially, this was a lot of presenting and this was a lot of hiring. I think in the course of the year, I did somewhere in the region of probably 80 interviews for all the different roles in the team and the different things that I was trying to do. And let me tell you, you soon get sick of hearing yourself saying the same things over and over and doing that kind of process. The sound of your own voice is pretty tiring after a while. And there's an awful lot of repetition because doing something new and saying something new and changing the direction and getting people to behave differently is, in the majority, I've found to be about repetition. It's just about saying the same things over and over and over again, reassuring people over and over and over again. So there's an awful lot of presentations, and we had to do all of this without letting the output of the team go backwards. So some of the things that went well, so some of the things that were successful over that time. So for me, everything started with content. So content, in effect, is the core of, I believe, is the core of a user experience, right? It's the thing that your user experience is ultimately delivering. And so our content and our content team became the priority for us. So because in this kind of point of content APIs, rich text APIs, content management systems, this was our main delivery method. So we introduced a UX writer role, which was extremely important for us and is working out really well in kind of creating our advantage and allowing us to kind of pepper our experiences with that Virgin Atlantic tone. We put a content strategist in place, and we now have kind of the formation of a content strategy which we're implementing, and that connects us together with marketing, that connects us together with the trading teams, that connects us together with the design team, etc., etc. So it was an important thing to do first. I should probably say we are all standing on different levels. Like this guy in the middle, Alex, he's not freakishly tall or anything. That is it's like a podium we're on anyway. So product days. So as a manager, right? So the kind of the creation of product teams on paper and on diagrams and doing all the upfront thinking, that's really the easy bit. Getting people to actually start working together and throwing together a group of strangers into a room and getting them to like working with one another and create things productively, that's the really difficult bit. So every time we stood up a product team, we took that product team and we took them into a different physical space. So they spent an entire day together, somewhere out of the office. Didn't really matter where it was, as long as it was somewhere different to kind of aid some different thinking. And we got everyone in the team to talk about their ambitions, everyone in that product team to talk about how they felt about the team, what they felt their role was in the team, talk about any concerns. And they started building their roadmaps and doing it together. And so now each team has its own product vision that they're bringing to life. This is sort of an example of how we've kind of started to do that without getting too close to the UI. So now everyone in that product team has a sense of ownership over the thing that they're trying to create and the kind of path that they're on. And then at the end of these product days, the team, well, they all pretty much just got drunk together, but they did it together, right? And it sort of helped them get used to one another. So one of the roles that we put in place was the optimization manager. And this role and this kind of way of working was absolutely vital for us to enrich our design process. And we're much better set up now to start running split tests and get into a test and learn cycle. In 2017, the team ran 3 experiments, 2 of which were inconclusive. 2018, we ran over 30 experiments. So far this year, we've almost exceeded that already. So this has been a huge benefit for us as a group. It's been a huge benefit for all of the product managers to get much closer to their customers. And it's been a huge advantage for us in de-risking a lot of investment and a lot of decisions. And in doing so, we had to find a way of clearly determining what was a valid experiment and what wasn't, more importantly. We didn't want to get into that kind of mode that design teams can often get into, which is just using split tests to settle arguments. We didn't want to use it as a tool for kind of hacking stuff. We didn't want to use it as a tool and a means by which we could just placate executives or anything like that. They had to be valid tests that we could learn from, other than, why would you do it otherwise? So we created this, what we describe as the 5 flag system. And these questions are really set up in order to kind of poke and prod at a test before it goes anywhere to determine, is it valid, is it going to get us anywhere, and are we going to learn from it? So onboarding, airline pun number 3. So we hired a lot of people, and we had to get good at bringing people into the team. We needed people to not spend 6 months just getting comfortable and understanding what was going on. We needed people to be able to come in, get comfortable really quickly and start working. So I put together a pretty comprehensive onboarding plan. It starts with a series of emails that go to people before they arrive in the business. We have schedules for their first days. We have a buddy system. These welcome packs. It's just a bag of stuff, branded stuff. I put it together. It's become a bit of a talking point in the team now because each of the welcome packs was slightly different. So people are like, what did you get? What did you get? Why didn't I get that? And there's a whole kind of comparison thing going on now, which is really nice. But it's helped team engagement, and it's helped people get on board very quickly and get engaged. So learning to speak business. This has been a really big one for us, actually. And this sounds quite trite, and it sounds like it's quite a daft thing to do, but this has been a really kind of vital step for us. The thing that we've kind of started to do here is started to understand and started to recognize that a lot of the UX terms and a lot of the kind of language that exists in our community and in our disciplines doesn't mean an awful lot for wider parts of the business, right? And you hear it a lot in the design community, and you hear a lot about UX designers and researchers and content people saying, oh, marketing just don't understand us, or the sales team, they don't get it. And yeah, maybe that's true, but I would question how many people in UX have ever learned the difference between econometrics and an acquisition model, you know? So I think it goes both ways. And so what I did for all of the new starters and everyone in the team, I did two things. We created an acronym dictionary. Every organization loves an acronym, right? So wrote them all down and explained what they are. And then we created this translation tool, which is it's a real thing. It's just it's a pages document. And on one side, we have UX terms and things that we like to talk about and things that we like to kind of deal with. On the other side, we talk about how you can reframe that into business language that actually makes sense to people and gets people moving. So for example, we stopped talking about UI bugs and we started talking about design debt, because sales teams hate debt, right? You say debt to them and that's when they get twitchy and start doing stuff. We stopped talking about prototypes that failed. We started talking about de-risking investment, because finance teams love to hear about that, right? So sharing headlines, telling people what we were doing and taking them on the journey, it seems like a little small action, but actually this has been really important for us. So all along the way, we've been just kind of dropping these little bits of information as to what we've been up to and what we've achieved, and more importantly, what some of the results have been around the business. And this has sort of dual benefit. One, in that the team, gets to feel good about themselves because we always name check everybody in doing so and making sure that everybody gets recognition. But it's also unexpectedly been a turning point in getting us involved earlier in pieces of work. When people have these little bites of information, they can start to build up a bigger picture. So rather than kind of doing any internal or kind of campaign or kind of doing any of that kind of profile raising kind of stuff, we just drop these little nuggets of information. We use our internal Facebook, we use Slack channels, we put posters up around the office. It's just become a habit. There's not really a schedule or any great design to it. This is one that I did during, when was this? This was the winter sale, and I just told everyone about the Golden Ticket initiative that we launched. It's pretty simple. It took 5 minutes. It's easy, right? And prototyping the team. So this was an unusual one. So before I got to the point where I wanted to hire anybody, much like the design process, I wanted to start doing small samples to determine the reaction to it in the same way that you do with a prototype. So I used a small agency called Clearleft to run one particular project, and I said to them, I want you to provide me with the roles that I'm going to hire. So I want research, I want a scrum master, I want a product designer, I want a content strategist, and I want you to run design sprints, I want you to have daily stand-ups, do collaborative sketching. So we kind of got those things in a small sample. And then, if you can just see in the background, I made them work in the kitchen, which is probably horrible for them, but everyone in the business has got to go to the kitchen at some point during the day, right? Everyone's going to go get a drink, get a mug, get their lunch out the fridge, whatever. So everybody in the business saw them. It was kind of like being in a zoo for them, but it was really important. And it began to normalize this practice of user experience design, and people got used to the amount of Post-its and Sharpie fumes that they were going to start experiencing. And it also allowed me to take people from around the existing digital team, but also from around the teams that we'd be working with, and just drop them in. So if they were running a design sprint, I would get someone from customer experience or someone from marketing or someone from operations and go into that design sprint with them so that they could either go back into their teams afterwards and feel like they were more confident in what was happening within the user experience team, or they could even just go into those teams and tell everyone what a great time they had, and it's, free reputation for us. So that was the good stuff. Here comes the tough stuff. It's certainly not all champagne and giggles along the way. We had some challenges. I should, probably for reputation reasons, I should point out that background isn't a Virgin Atlantic flight. So we messed up a couple of pretty important deliveries, and we did that by not doing any kind of tech feasibility along the way in this first couple of projects. We did is we spent all the time that we had, we knew when we had to launch, and we just spent it all designing and creating this thing and arguing over the strategy of it. And then at the end of that time, the devs turned around and said, well, yeah, that's about 3 weeks worth of work. It's like we'd forgotten that we had to build the thing. We got so excited by the whole user experience creation. It was pretty embarrassing. I mean, we kind of just ran out of time very quickly. One of the first roles that I hired was a user experience role. Gosh. And you know what? It was way too soon. I admit this now, and I can see it in retrospect, that we hired a user experience researcher, a dedicated full-time person, before we had a design team. So before we actually knew what we needed to discover, we had this person kind of sitting there waiting. It was a very frustrating process. Of course, we still do research, but we're only just kind of getting to a point where we're actually now doing it habitually and it's kind of built in. So having one person at this kind of early stage when we were not kind of ready to support it was too much too soon, unfortunately. So the downside to telling everyone about all this great stuff you're going to do is that people want you to do all this great stuff, right? And at first we didn't really know how much we could do. We didn't know how much too much was. And we were just so excited to be involved in everything that we just said yes to everything. And that was a pretty harsh experience, because there was a phase where we had to just start saying no, or we've said yes, but now it's a no, or not quite yet. So our backlogs and our sprint planning have become even more important than ever. Our burn down charts are starting to look less like a nightmare and starting to look a little bit more sensible now. So there was a fair bit of work that we inherited, and we made the mistake or I really made the mistake of concentrating on the things that we had responsibility for creating. And then these other things that were already in flight, airline pun number 3, we just kind of ignored them and thought, well, they'll be okay. And this was a really big mistake, because when taking responsibility for something, an experience, you have to take full responsibility for it. And the big difference, as you probably know, between a project team and a product team is that a product team is never off the hook. There's no delivery and then you get to walk away and high fives. You just live with the stuff. And we learned that the hard way. And lastly, drones. For fuck's sake, drones. Did everyone see this news story? What a nightmare. I just don't know what... So we were due to launch this shiny new thing that morning when this started to happen, and we just had to can it, because when something like this happens and people are just in pandemonium and some idiots flying drones, or maybe they weren't, around the airports, everything stops and everything has to change. And this was a pretty brutal lesson in what it's like to work for an airline. So no matter what you've got in your calendar, no matter what you're planning for your day, no matter what is in your sprint cycles, when something like this happens and it's out of your control, you have to be ready for it, and you have to have some form of process for reacting very quickly and replanning. And we didn't, and we kind of fell on our face with this one, but we scrambled, we got some stuff done, and we've now built in lots of processes for understanding how to respond to things like this. So that was everything last year. We're still going, obviously, and this year's even more exciting, and we've got some good things coming up, and we've got lots of projects that are coming into land. It's my last one. So Team Safaris, this is something which we've just started doing. It sounds like a bit of a daft name. I don't know why we call it this, really. But what we've just started doing is just reaching out to the UX community. So every now and then we just get in touch with people who are doing things that we think are quite cool, and we ask if we can sit down with them, buy them a coffee and share ideas. We don't share anything sensitive. We don't talk about projects that we've got coming up necessarily. We don't talk about budgets or anything. We just talk about roles that we've got. We talk about lessons that we've learned. So we talk to people at Deliveroo, at McLaren, IBM, Innocent. If it is something you don't do, I strongly recommend it. User experience is a lovely community, and all it really takes is just reaching out to people, and we learn a hell of a lot. Bringing together digital and physical design is something that's been ongoing and something that we're very keen to do a lot more of. For us, our product, it always involves a plane. It always involves a physical space of some kind. There's always an airport in there somewhere. And screens are now so pervasive that to limit a user experience just to a screen and a keyboard and a mouse, I think is kind of really selling it short. And so we're trying to learn how we can kind of mold these things around one another. This is a shot from last year where we did some prototyping, and we were looking at in-flight entertainment, and we were looking at shared screens in shared spaces. And you can see it's pretty basic stuff. It's tripods, it's chairs. But we learned probably as much about screen sizes, shapes, and ergonomics as we did about the interactions on the screen at the time. Research safari. Has anyone done one of these? Yeah, is this a thing that people have done? If you haven't done it yet, I strongly recommend you take a look at this. This isn't one of ours, actually. This is from an article from Facebook Design, which is on Medium. It's worth a read if you've got the time. Research museums are a way to bring research findings out into the open. It's significantly, I can guarantee you, it's better than a PDF report, because that's where good things go to die. This is about kind of taking those insights and making them very physical and very visible to people, and allowing people to move through them in a physical space in their own time. I'm very excited about doing more of these. And then the work, of course. Mustn't forget the work. So we've done quite a lot of stuff so far, and we've got a fair bit coming up. We've launched, and we're still working out some of the bugs in our new flight search experience. We've completely done this from the ground up, so now we have multi-city, children, infants, etc., etc., etc. It's all nice and responsive. We created a baggage bot. We get a lot of questions about bags and baggage. How much can I take? What do I get? What I don't get? What are the sizes of it? All that kind of stuff. Virgin Atlantic has a very, very simple policy for bags. You can't really go too far wrong with it, but it's something that people worry about. So we created a little bot. There's a small set of answers. It's got that kind of Virgin Atlantic tone of voice to it. People worry less calls in the call center. Everyone's happy. Meal pre-selection, so now you can, this is still in proof of concept, so we haven't fully rolled this out yet. This is across just a few key routes and a few key airports, so you can now pick which of the meals you want in advance, so you don't have to worry about it not being there. Super simple and consistent Wi-Fi connection. So with Virgin Atlantic, you get Wi-Fi in the lounges, you get it on the planes, etc., etc. They were a bit disjointed and they didn't all feel the same, and sometimes they had different passwords, etc., etc. So we've just gone through and tidied all of those things up. And there's loads more stuff, and there's lots more coming up, and probably more than I could fit into one presentation. So there we go. There's no great conclusion to this. This is just a small slice of what we've achieved over the last year. It's our story so far. I think we've come a long way, and we've still got an awful lot to do. But I've been very lucky in that we've got a pretty amazing team. Thank you very much.